Hello and welcome to the Real Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, T. Ares, and today we have a special guest, Natalie Ramirez. Great story. She is an entrepreneur from birth, pretty much. You're going to love the story. So, my guest, Natalie, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really interested in your story just because I know that your dad is an entrepreneur.
Yes, he is.
And tell me a little bit about your dad and how you were a little girl learning basically just from him talking. I'm sure that helped you and influenced you to be an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. My father is an amazing man. The things he's done in his life. My dad's been an entrepreneur since he was, I want to say, 12 years old. He started working in the streets of Colombia when he was a kid before he came over here. Came to the United States in Connecticut at, I think it was 17 years old. And he started working since that age. And he's had businesses ranging from cabinet building to flower exportation to medical device sales to sleep study clinics, and then eventually landing in clinical research. So that kind of actually happened spontaneously. They were doing the sleep study clinic and they got approached by a sponsor and or pharmaceutical company, for people that don't know what sponsors are, to see if they could do a sleep study research study, research study.
Is that the one that they put the mask on?
Yeah, they put a bunch of electrodes on you, and sometimes they don't necessarily automatically put a mask, because the point is to see how you sleep without it in order to see if that's a diagnostic for it. But sleep studies, that's basically what they do. They would study you while you sleep, depending on the patient, just one night, or if they didn't get the good results because the patient wasn't sleepy, they would have to come in for another night. But they got approached by a pharmaceutical company, him and his business partner at that time. And they wanted to know basically hey, would you be interested in doing a sleep study for research? And obviously he didn't know anything of what this industry was, and it's a very niche industry. You know it or you don't, right? It's not something that is very common, even though it's becoming more popular in South Florida, I feel, than it was ever before. But so basically that's how he got started, right? Without knowing anything about the industry. He just said yes, because my dad is very much, I don't want to say yes man, but business he doesn't really turn down, right? He's very open to new opportunities.
So how did that help you being a little girl? I always think that you have a dad that's just talking business all the time, and your subconscious mind is actually picking that up,
absorbing that.
And how did you, because now you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
How did that come about? Did you just start working with him and then you started getting some knowledge?
So I was in school. I had been working with my dad in the summers since I was 15 years old. And I would start at the front desk, and then from the front desk, and obviously you're 15, you're not paying attention to much at that point, right? But he was pretty much grooming me, right, without me really knowing it. Right. And he would put me from the front desk to the regulatory department, from the regulatory department to the business development department, from that department to the clinical department, and so on and so forth. And I was only there a couple months those summers. Right. And when I graduated from the University of Miami in 2012, I graduated on a Friday. I think it was Friday, May 9th or something. My first day was that Monday, May 11th. He was no time to waste. You're coming to work on Monday. And I was all right, awesome. Great. I studied sports medicine, and I was doing something completely separate from that. But that's how it went about, pretty much. And then I started working. And when I started working full time with him, I started off in business development. And then I didn't really like that, even though that's one of the most crucial things of my business now, right? But he was like, I don't care if you like it or not, you're going to learn it. You're going to learn every single department in this business.
So business development, that's a really important part, especially as an entrepreneur. Yeah. What did you find out, or what did you learn from him doing that particular job?
So let me tell you, that was his mastermind behind the business. That was why he was so successful and so great at what he did, was because he was able to get the business to come in. And in research, that's the hardest thing, right? Is you see now Miami sites opening up left and right, and they don't last more than 6 months. And it's because it's very, very difficult to get research studies in this industry, especially in this day and age where there's so many people trying to pop up. It's a very regulated, very precise industry, right? We're regulated by the FDA, and you have to know what you're doing. So without having those relationships built and that networking that he would do, I go to like 4 or 5 conferences a year. He would go to every single conference under the sun that existed for pharmaceutical research, and he would build connections with people, right? And then I want to say I was maybe 27 or so. I had left him because, things happen. But I actually went to work for the sponsors and the CROs, and I did that for almost 6 years. I did it for about 5.5 years. And I learned even more than he ever would, right? Because I worked for the people that hire me, right? And in the beginning, he was like, I can't believe you're leaving, this and that. I'm like, this is going to be really good for me. I'm diversifying myself. I'm going to sites all over the country, all over. I don't know if you remember me, all those traveling. I lived on a plane. All of that traveling and going from different sites to different sites really gave me a foundation of, hey, when I'm ready to start my own, these are all the things that I want to make sure are applied in that. But he really taught me how to have those relationships, how to approach new pharmaceutical representatives, and be okay to, introduce myself and move forward. So every conference that I go to now, I'm growing so much, and I'm able to bring some of my staff along with me, and I'm instilling those same practices into them. Like, don't be shy, don't be afraid, don't be timid. You know what you're doing, you know what you do, you know what the business is about. Have a conversation.
So tell me now a little bit. You've gotten all this knowledge from your dad. You have all the experience from working not only in his job and in his company, going to basically the other side, and then putting it all together. And then now you've not only did you open one, company or one location, now you have 3.
Yes.
Now, how did you get to that so fast? Because it's only how long has it been? How fast have you done that? Because that's something that really could help somebody break out of the shell.
Yeah.
Because if you have a business and you're trying to expand, how did you do it? Like, what did you do? What's the magic sauce? So maybe with what you tell me, we could tell everybody that's the audience how you did it, and maybe that could help them with their journey.
So the biggest thing, at least in my industry, is the relationships that you built and the teams that you develop, right? So when I started off, my dad actually started my company for me. It was like his big, father legacy thing that he wanted to do. He started it in 2018. I finally came on board in the middle of the pandemic. And I got a 20% ownership, and that ownership was going to grow, as he saw that I can take it on. I took full ownership, I want to say the following year, at the beginning of 2022.
Okay.
I forget because it goes by so fast, but I've been 100% the owner of this company now for a couple of years. And I grew the company. The way he had it strategized before was that he was embedded in doctors' offices. And with my experience from working with the sponsors, I said, no, this doesn't work. You need to have a ground zero. We can still be embedded in doctors' offices, but we need to have a main location. That's the only way we're going to grow. That way too, if the sponsors need to come see, they can do all like the regulatory monitoring visits in one unit, and then go to the site to see, IP, this, that, the other. We used to work with a lot of pediatricians that would see the pediatric patients in their offices, but everything else would happen in our main location.
Right.
So that's what I did. I rented a space. Within 6 months, I had to rent another suite. Within 6 months after that, I had to rent a third location.
That's good.
So I grew it very quickly. And that was all a lot with those relationships that I had built too with my father, with the business development.
But how did you, because the whole thing is, how did you grow so fast? Because sometimes they say, if you grow too fast, it's bad. If you grow too slow, it's bad. How were you able to structure or deal with such quick, rapid growth? And how did you hire people? Because it just doesn't run on its own either.
Yeah, no. We grew the team. I grew the team from a team of, I think it was 4 or 6 of us, to 15, 20 within the first year to those 15 to 20 to, 25, 30. And now we're 43 amongst the three companies. So the industry is very niche, like I told you, right? And when you're really good at what you do, you get the repetitive business. So with all the experience that my team brings, that was one of the biggest learning lessons I could get to anybody, is creating a team that is not only diversified in their skill set, but also their experience is what makes this possible. I can't do it alone. I did it alone for the first 2 years and I burnt out. It's, you miss things too. I'm only human, right? Yeah. So the only way I was able to do that growth is hiring the right people. And granted, you can only do that obviously when you're making a certain amount of revenue too. So it was a slow growth in my eyes. It was slow, even though for most people, you grew that company in 3 years.
Right.
But in my industry is so complex. I have to have a team of people that do everything, right? A regulatory team, an unblinded team, a blinded team, a quality team, a business development team. Like it's very compartmentalized like that. Right. And that's the only way that I feel I can do success. Because a lot of people, especially in my industry, they stay very narrow on what they do, and they don't diversify with different groups. So a lot of sites, what they typically do is they'll have the coordinator do regulatory, quality, data entry. Like the coordinators do everything, but then your quality slows down, and then they can't be that productive. You can't think that one person can carry a 200 patient study and do the regulatory and do the data entry and respond to queries, a lot of different things. So
I think because you were worked on both sides of it, you have a different look at everything that's going on, which
absolutely
that it's good that you learned one side than the other,
absolutely,
and how you were able to learn those in and outs, that helps, because
even when it comes to setting up the location. So you asked how I grew from 1 to 2 to 3. I used to have to go to sites and audit those sites and look at those sites and see if they qualify for the study. Like, do they have all the equipment that they need? Do they have the staff that they need? Do they have the resources that they need? I knew all that because I did that for 6 years.
What happens if they don't have it?
You don't get the study.
So and
then you don't get revenue coming in, right?
Yeah. So this will help you revenue wise, because obviously you're going to have all the equipment that's going to be needed.
Every new site that I start is set up from the ground zero in a very meticulous fashion, so that when studies start coming in and they come to site tours, because they do like pre-site selection visits or PSSVs, they call them, and they come and they'll do a presentation with us, go over like a synopsis of the study, meet with the investigators and some of the site staff, and then they'll do a tour. And when they're doing their tour, they'll be like, okay, do you have a 2 to 8 refrigerator? Yes. Do you have a -80 refrigerator? Yes. Do you have one in the lab? Yes. So they have a list of things that they need in order to be able to conduct the trial correctly.
Right.
And if you don't have that, it's hard to get selected. They don't do it anymore, but in the past, in the good old days, sponsors used to provide certain equipment if you didn't have it. They don't really do that anymore. So it's one of those things too. Do you have the revenue enough to, let's say you need an incubator and you don't really have one because not all your studies do it, would you be able to outsource it? Do you know where to outsource that? Do you have, all that in place within your company to be able to, on a dime, call the person you need to call in order to get what you need to get the trial?
Right.
Because that's potentially millions and millions of dollars in revenue. Could be, right?
Right, of course.
So.
And so you had to start the business. You're running basically most of the departments on your own. Are you trying to replace yourself in each department? Like, let's say accounting.
I have an accounting team of 4 people now, 5 people.
You have to replace, you have to get an accountant. Then, because business is not only, bringing in the business, now it's the accounting, the payroll,
absolutely,
the HR. You have all these different positions.
Absolutely.
Were you having to bring in a certain person? Okay, here's HR. I need, this person's great. How do you get those people? Do you
So,
do an Indeed?
I can tell you,
It's so hard to get good people
it
nowadays.
is. Again, like I told you, my industry is very niche. So typically we know a lot of the people that work in the industry. So that's a huge plus, at least when it comes to what we do. But for example, like HR, my payroll company recommended an HR person, it's Northgate. And we actually outsource that. So there's some things that I'll outsource, so we don't do in person.
Okay.
But most of the things we do in-house. So accounting, I actually had a little bump in the road with accounting, and that was a huge learning lesson, right?
I mean, accounting is so
it's
important.
it's so important. If I'm not billing for the things that I've done, I'm not going to get paid, right?
Yeah.
The pharmaceutical company isn't going to come and be like, hey, Natalie, you still have $1 million on the table. They're not going to do that, right? So that was some growing pains that we had, because I used to use the same company that I've known from the past, right? And when we did an internal audit, there was just things that weren't right. There were some things missing that we could have billed for that we didn't. So I actually spent all of last year and some of this year doing audits through every single study. I did hire an outside person for an auditor to go in there and audit all the books. And then I built my own in-house accounting team. Like I said, it used to be a team of 2 and now it's 5. So you have to be able, in order to be where you want to be, you have to unfortunately grow and invest in your business to be able to do it. That's something that I've learned. But eventually it pays it back, right? Like it pays that investment forward. And I really know that as we continue to grow, the company will continue to grow with employees, with different teams, with, we just purchased a building actually very close to here down the street. It's 12,500 square foot.
Wow.
I started in 1,700 square foot suite. And within, 5 years, I was able to do this purchase. But that investment is only going to take me to the next level and open another set of doors, for the future. Which I have plans of growing the company even more to a certain extent, maybe only a couple more locations, but I do have those goals, I do have those plans. And without those sacrifices, and those investments and taking risks, is at the end of the day, they are risks. You don't see the outcome of that.
How about marketing? Do you, since you have a niche market, do you need to market yourself, or when you go to those seminars, is that where you're picking up the people and that's your marketing strategy? So
it's a two-part answer, right? We do marketing, but 90% of the marketing that we do is actually to recruit patients. So we'll do patient recruitment, we'll do ads and social media ads, we'll do radio ads, we'll do sometimes television ads to advertise a certain study that we're recruiting for. That we do a lot of on an ongoing basis. That never stops. But advertisements so much as like the company out in the pharmaceutical industry, not so much, other than me doing that face-to-face. And obviously we get repeated business because once we do really good on a study and the sponsor sees that, they typically come back.
So and do they refer you?
We are part of a network company that refers studies to us. We also do have our own business development team that goes out and does that outreach to see if there's any new studies. You can go on clinicaltrials.gov and get some studies. You can join, like I said, some of those networks that will refer studies to you. And then we also reach out to all of the contacts that I have, at my disposal, which is a lot. Luckily, my dad provided me with a bunch of knowledge when it came to that, and then everyone else that I've met too when I worked at pharmaceutical companies for those almost 5.5 years that I was there. And every conference that we go to, we meet new people. So that's how we actually, I guess, would say advertise for the business would be that way. But the advertisement that we really do that you'll see or hear on the radio, that's more for recruitment of patients.
Because I've heard on the radio, sleep, I don't know what, go to the hospital and stay.
They'll pay you for your time. So typically,
it's like more or less like that.
So typically, every sponsor, when we do the budgets, they do a patient stipend for their time and travel and participation in the trial. And That's basically how we recruit, for the patients. And patients, depending on the study, I mean, phase 1, they can pay in the thousands. We do a lot of phase 1 outpatient and up to phase 4, and those will pay a patient anywhere from $25 depending on the visit to $350 depending on the visit. So depending on the procedures, depending on the trial, it's very particular to the trial. And you could have the same pharmaceutical company but have sister studies, and they're night and day different, right? It really just depends. But we do compensate the patients when they do come in for their time and travel. And then, they come in, they do their visits, and at the end, they get they can choose whether they want like the card and or like.
Right, so they'll have options there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting how you have marketing on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's why I was like, it's a two-part. It's a two-part.
Yeah. And it's good that, so the people that are doing the trial, they help you then with the marketing part of that? Is that how
so
it
sometimes it is structured within the sponsor's budget for advertising, right? And that's my biggest job now in my business. Aside, I'm the CEO and site director, but that's one of the biggest things we do. We negotiate the budget, we make sure the budget is right, and then we continue. Aside from continuing to grow my business, which is one of the biggest things that I'm responsible for, it's making sure that those budgets and contracts are adequate, right? And I do have a counterpart that helps me because, again, I'm one person and I can only do so much, but we make sure that before we finalize, we look at everything and we make sure it's ready to go. And yes, we can get those. We can get advertisement for the patient-specific recruitment compensated by the sponsor.
Well, that's good. No, it helps.
Yeah,
it
does. It's very expensive, so it does help.
Yeah. And are you putting together the advertisement, or like the campaign?
The campaign. So we work.
Or do you work? Or do you?
So sometimes they do provide. Sometimes they do provide patient-facing material. What we've seen in the industry is that it doesn't always work what they provide. So they do give us the option of creating our own. And once we create our own, we have to submit it to them for approval and then to the IRB for approval.
Do you have a marketing team for that?
I have a recruitment call center and a manager of the recruitment department that works hand in hand with the person that actually does the creative design of these plans. And then so they work as a team, and then it goes through all the processes. And then
because when you first started, I'm sure you were the creative, you were the marketing, you were.
I was a little bit of. I had multiple faces, and I still do. And believe it or not, I still do. I'm still very involved also in the clinical aspect of the business, just because I bring so much of that knowledge and experience to the table. So I have my upper management team, but they'll still be like, "Hey, Nat, we have a question, this and that. What's your guidance?" So I'm still very involved on all aspects of the business, no matter what. But I have, obviously, like most CEOs, have to start delegating down, right? Because there's only so much that one person can be on top of and micromanaging. You'll go crazy.
So how were you able to do, like what they say, I'm gonna work in my business, not on my business? Or are you working, so because if you're working in the business, which it seems you're not working in the business, you're working on your business, you're working on getting everybody together. How are you able to do that? Like to basically let go of these positions, because nobody could do it like you.
Agreed.
And that's the hardest thing is how do you let go, and because you're trusting all this stuff to your employee and then to another employee, and then it's hard to let go because then they make a mistake. You're like, how did you make this mistake? How did you do that? I
mean, don't get me wrong, it's happened before, right? And it was very difficult for me to let go on that range. Like I said, my biggest point from this is building a very strong team and trusting the people, especially directly under you. Like my clinical operations director is my right hand and also my best friend. And we met each other in my dad's company 15 plus years ago, right? Cool. So when I was able to offer her this position and compensate her for everything that she did, it took a while. I was the octopus before, I was able to delegate a lot to her at that point. And again, someone I trust blindly with my eyes closed. So the key in in growth for me, and success in that growth at the rapid pace that I did it, is building that strong foundation of team. I also am a firm believer in growing within the company. I've had employees that have been with me from day one that started, at front desk or at a coordinator level, and now they're managers and directors of certain departments, right?
Good.
So I am a strong believer in building on my team and growing my team. And granted, we all have turnaround like every other company, right? But you don't see it as high as compared to most. And it's because I really try to nurture and give back to my team and work with them one-on-one and evolve them and grow them so that we can continue to succeed together.
Do you have like any type of training that you're doing with them, like to keep them?
We do concentrate.
I know it's hard. I know all of this is hard. I know like these big companies, they're like, oh, well, we're going on this retreat to I don't know where, or on a cruise, the whole company. But when you have a small company, you're not.
It's very hard to do those lavish.
And then I'm like, I see this, and I'm like, in theory that's great, but I'm not there. So I'm just wondering, how are you able to get such loyalty in your employees that you're able to move them up? I guess is my question.
So we do a lot of training. It's the nature of the business. It's how it works. We're constantly growing, constantly evolving. We do a lot of like work lunches. I'll buy lunch for the entire company, even at the different locations. I do work. I'll do pay for lunch, and then we'll do like a lunch and learn kind of situation. Right. We try to do fun activities. Every time I get a chance, we do fun things together. We'll take them out to lunch. I haven't done it in a while because it's been so busy, but we'll do fun things like that. And then every year I throw them a Christmas party. The goal is eventually to be able to do one in the summer and one in Christmas, because we do work a lot. And my goal is to always give back to my employees, but they do get a lot of benefits too. I do have a 401k. I do profit sharing for them too. So they feel like all that work, they're also getting a chunk of the profits at the end of every year. So little things like that continue to grow them, and I have been very blessed. I like to think that I'm a really good boss, I'm firm when I need to be, but other than that, I have a very open door policy. Like every single employee in my company knows that if they need something, they have my phone number and they can call me. And having that direct, almost same level kind of relationship with all of them. I'm human, you're human. Yes, I am your boss. Yes, I am your superior. But at the same time, like you need something, you have a question, a concern, I want you to feel comfortable to approach me, and not keep it hidden or not say something or not report something because you're like, oh my God, I'm going to get in trouble. Yeah, I don't have that working relationship with my staff.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I want one of the final questions that I want to ask you, and it's, I think, a really important one is you've been able to see your dad succeed. Mm-hmm. You've been able to succeed on your own. And what advice would you give either a young entrepreneur or an entrepreneur that's been in business that is trying to get to the next level? What advice that you might be able to give them to get them to that next level?
I think never giving up on yourself and not holding yourself down is super important. There were nights that I was leaving that office at midnight, 1, 2. It still happens, very few, but it still happens. And you feel like you're about to fail, your head's against the wall, and you can do it. You can do it and continue to succeed. You just have to remove yourself from the situation, clear your head, maybe do some meditation or listen to a podcast or a self-help book, and really, reground yourself and then take on the next day. I think with all the adversity I've had and all, with growth comes growing pains, right? With all that I've had, I really had to find myself just removing myself from the situation, clearing my head, so I can continue. In addition to that, asking, like if you don't know what to do something, get on a computer and Google if you have to, read, educate yourself. There's a lot of things, especially on the business side of me doing this. I didn't know. 'Cause I was always clinical. You know, like
Right.
running a business was a new experience for me. And, you know, sometimes my dad wasn't available for me to ask him a question or whatnot. And, you know, I would get on the internet and I would just educate myself, you know. So education really has given me a much more well-rounded opportunity to really succeed and continue to succeed. And even to this day, I don't know something. Okay, give me a second.
Right.
I'm going to learn. You know, I'm going to learn it, because if I don't know it, then I don't fail just myself. I fail 40-something employees.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you mentioned but you didn't really mention is to have a mentor, because you have your dad as a mentor.
I do.
And that's when you were talking right now, and I'm listening to what you're saying, and you said, I couldn't talk to my dad, so I had to do it on my own. So very important to have a mentor has done it before. So I think there's people that you have to like get
Absolutely.
to know and become friends, and then eventually they become your mentor.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you were lucky you had your dad, but you know, just from that, I think the mentor thing and all the other advice is great advice.
Absolutely.
So tell everybody, I mean, I'm going to put it on the description down below, all your information, but tell people, you know, where they could go to find you. Also, there's going to be people listening that might want to do the sleep training thing. And, you know, where could they find that information out?
So my company's website is www.sratrials.com, and then my second company is www.sratrialsnorth.com. So I have 3 locations, 2 under Suncoast Research Associates and 1 under SRA Trials North. SRA Trials North is located in Lauderdale Lakes. My second location is in Miramar for SRA Trials, and then my main location is down in Miami.
No, in Doral.
Soon to be in Doral, hopefully. Hopefully this building is done soon, yes. Yeah, I'll actually be moving hopefully by the end of February down the street.
Good. Well, we'll be having lunch down the
Yes,
street.
we sure will. We sure will.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you.
I think it was a lot of good information that you put out, and I'm sure you're going to help somebody, you know,
I'm
just
looking
when
forward to it,
telling your
definitely.
story.
Definitely looking forward to it.